Well, good morning, everyone. This leprosy that we hear about so much today in our readings. Our first reading from Leviticus was actually from around the 1500s before Christ. People dealing with a skin disease, and what they did was they ostracized people. They told them to get away, get out of our community, don't come to the worship places, stay away from everyone. And if you see anyone, yell, unclean, unclean, so you can warn them to stay away from you. And in Jesus' time, we hear the same thing. Yet a leper realizes that this is the Son of God. And he wants to come to the temple because he's been ostracized from the community, not allowed to worship with his people, not see his family, to stay away from everyone. Yell, I'm unclean, I'm a sinner, stay away. And yet he has the courage to go to Jesus. And Jesus does the amazing thing of not only avoiding him, but reaching out and touching him, cleansing him of his leprosy. 1,400 years after that, we hear of St. Damien and St. Mary the Cope going to Hawaii, Malachi, because then people with leprosy were put on boats and taken right out of the community and sent to this island, Malachi, because they were unclean. And they were separated again from everyone, society, taken away on a boat far, far away where they'll never be seen, never see their family again. And yet Jesus, through St. Damien and St. Mary and Cope, who actually grew up right here in Utica, worked at St. Joseph's in Syracuse, went to Malachi to minister to those people. And today, we still have lepers all through our society and around the world. Maybe not so much as a skin disease, but people who are outcasts, people that we don't want to associate with, people we don't want near us. Stay away from me. I don't want to deal with you. I don't want anything to do with you. You're a bother. You just irritate me. I have disdain for you. I don't want anything to do with you. Get away. Can you think of anyone like that in your life? We all have them. People who aren't necessarily suffering from the disease of leprosy, but who are lepers in our world, in our lives. When I was studying to be a deacon, every summer they'd send us away for 80 hours to some ministry. It would be like a prison ministry, a hospital ministry, a parish ministry of some sort to get some experience and exposure. And one summer they sent me to Clifton Springs Hospital, and they put me into the Comprehensive Psychiatric Emergency Program, or CPEP is what it's called. And it's people who are dealing with mental issues, anxiety, depression. Sometimes they get off their medicines. It was a really difficult summer for me. But there I ran into one of my lepers. And he was a young boy. I was up in the office, and we got the call that we got a new admission. And my job was to go down and interview them. I had a 7-page evaluation to see if anything had to be done immediately, if they needed medicine or restraints or something like that. And as I read the quick overview of who I was going to go talk to, he was a 14-year-old boy who had just tried to commit suicide. He was in a group home out towards Seneca Falls. And his main issue was that he was a pedophile. And I read this and I thought, oh Lord, how could a 14-year-old child do this already? And I was just starting to deal with some of the priests that I knew who had been accused of something like this. And it was a real raw thing for me. And I didn't want to go in there and deal with this kid. But that was the job that I was assigned to. And I remember walking down there and opening the door, and he was just sitting there slouched over. And I said, how are you? And he goes, well, how do you think I'm doing? Everyone hates me. And I had to look at him and think to myself, yeah, I bet they do. I don't think I like you either. And we went through the report and we started talking a little bit, and I started learning a little bit about his history. I went back upstairs, got the full report on him, and I realized after reading his history that he was born into an abusive family where his father abused him. They took him out of his home, away from his family, and put him into a foster family. Again, he was abused by that family. Taken out of that family and put into another one. This family had 2 young children. He began to abuse. After that, he was put into this group home, and this is when he tried to hurt himself. He laid on a stretcher outside the emergency room in the hallway because we had no room at the emergency room for him to have a little room or any privacy. And one of the things about Clifton Springs Hospital is they don't deal with people under 18. And being 14 years old, I had to find another place for him to go in New York State because he was a ward of the state. And I and another person started calling other hospital facilities around New York State. We called 52 places that day, and not one would accept him. He sat there in that gurney. I went down there just to check on him, let him know I haven't forgot about you, I'm here. What can I get you? And I'd sneak him a candy bar or two, and we'd start talking a little bit, and more, I started to like this kid. I realized what he had gone through, and it wasn't fair. Life hadn't treated him fair at all. I'd go back up, and we kept trying to find a place for him to go, and he sat in that room in the hallway on that gurney for 58 hours until one Sunday afternoon, I came in just to check on him, and he was gone. They had found a place for him in Poughkeepsie. And the nurse there at the station said, "Here's a little note for you from him." And it just simply said, "Thank you for being my friend." Over that whole time, not a single person visited him. No family members, no one from the home, no friends. I think the saddest thing I've ever encountered, and I've done it too many times, is a child that's never been loved. I don't know how to go through life like that without being loved. And yet, I think so many people who are suffering in this world, who are so-called lepers, who are the outcasts that no one wants to deal with, that's all they need. They need someone like us to reach out, to be imitators of Christ, as Paul talks about, to reach out and just love, to look past the sin and see the person. And Eric gave a wonderful homily last week, I hope you caught it, about how Jesus would often go off by himself and just be alone, or be in the tomb for 3 days before he came out. And as I did that, as I went off and I prayed on my own about this child who came into my life so briefly, I initially thought that he was the leper, and I was there to try to heal him. But I realized that I was the leper. I was the one in need of healing. Because I walked in there judging. I walked in there filled with disdain and disgust for this kid. And I didn't even know him yet. I just knew his sin. And that's all I saw, and that's all I knew. And as I thought about it, I realized this little 14-year-old boy was Jesus in disguise, trying to teach me to not be this way, that I have issues and sores and sins that I have to deal with, that I was the leper the whole time. I looked at him, saw the speck in his eye, but not realizing I had the plank or the beam in my eye. I was standing in the crowd ready to throw a rock at the woman caught in adultery until Jesus reminded me, "Let the first one who has not sinned cast the stone." I was the one standing there in the crowd telling blind Bartimaeus to be quiet, don't bother me. Don't bother Jesus. When Jesus called out to him, "Bring him here." I realized that sometimes these people in our lives who we don't like, just irritate us, bother us, or whatever it may be, who just are outcasts and we don't want to deal with, Jesus is bringing them into our life, maybe so that we could see ourselves and realize that we have things we have to work on ourselves, because that I can fix. That I can get on my knees and go to Jesus and say, if you will it, you can clean me. You can cleanse me. We all need that sometimes. We all need to recognize that we too are sinful. And as we start Lent, it's going to start out in the desert. And I know people have different interpretations. For me, the desert represents where I am. Sinful. Adam and Eve started out in this beautiful garden until they sinned. Then they were cast out. And next week you'll hear how the Spirit drove him into the desert. Why? Because that's where I am. I'm with my sin. And he encounters the devil out there. And that's where I am. And eventually, if I follow Jesus, if I trust in God and follow his ways and try to be an imitator of Christ, Jesus will die for us, take away sin, and then when he rises, he's back in the garden, where Mary Magdalene thinks he's the gardener. This is where we're all called to go. But we have to deal with ourselves and face our own realities and our own shortcomings and know that sometimes we can't fix it ourselves. We're the leper. Sometimes we have to go to Jesus and ask, if you will it, you can cleanse me. And you know his answer? I do will it. Do we will it to ask?